My dear children, dear Natarajan ji, Kalpana ji, and all the friends from Adobe. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for all the good work you are doing for children in bringing the smiles on their faces. Sometimes I used to say, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi ji's talisman, that until and unless our constitutional provisions and laws, our schemes and policies are unable to bring a smile on the face of a girl who was born and grew up in a remote village somewhere on the earth. Her parents are bonded laborers, child laborers are her brothers and sisters. Herself was forced to work since her childhood and most vulnerable for any kind of abuses and exploitation. This is my parameter to judge the success of laws and policies and programs. The smile on the face of that girl is the key. So, in your efforts, I heard that you have been able to work with hundreds of children who are marginalized and vulnerable. Friends, let me begin with my own childhood and my first spark. It was the first day of my primary school. It was a local municipal school in Madhya Pradesh. My small town is Vidisha, where I was born and grew up. So I saw a cobbler boy, my age, 5, 6 year old, sitting at the doorstep of the school. And he was looking at us whether we are going to give him some shoe polishing or shoe repairing job. And that has disturbed me because I was in the impression and I was told by my parents and my elder brothers that every child is supposed to go to school after some time. So it was quite surprising and shocking for me that why this child was sitting outside the school gate. I asked this to my teacher, the first question in my life. And he said, calm down, this is your first day, nothing is new in it. Poor children have to help their families. But I was not convinced. I kept quiet. But I asked the same question to my mother and other family members. And their answer was more or less similar. But every morning, I used to see that boy sitting under the open sky, and when I used to go back home, he was still sitting in the afternoon. One day, I gathered all my courage and went to him and his father, who was also sitting alongside. Boy was shy. But his father stood up with folded hands and said, Babuji means sir. I never thought about it because my parents, my grandparents, and I started working like this since our childhood. And now my son, he said. And then, with utter helplessness and helplessness in his eyes, he replied, sir, we people are born to go to work like this, and you are born to go to school. Schools are for you, not for us. It was so shocking and so painful. I became very angry and I started crying out of anger and pain. But I was not yet convinced that why some children are born to work at the cost of their childhood, their education, their future, their dreams, their aspirations, everything. And that had given me a new perspective of life. I started thinking that whatever my teachers told me, or my parents, or other wise, matured people say, may not be right. It could be an age old social complacency. It could be a mindset which is driven by duality and injustices. I kept eyes of that boys with me, and then I started seeing the world. And that was the beginning of questioning the wrongs around me since my own childhood. But then I realized that this kind of compulsions, poverty, forced to work as child laborers, are responsible for denial of education. And denial of education means denial of all future possibilities and potential, denial of a free, happy life. So, education was the key. I will also like to share another story of that time when I was 11-year old. And that is the story related to how the volunteerism grew inside me on my own. But let me also tell you before that that there is a volunteer inside each one of you. There is a hero inside each one of you. There is a champion. There is a leader. There is a change maker. There is a social reformer. You need not to look outside when you see the world with a different perspective, and then you are able to differentiate that something is wrong. And if you are able to discover your own potential, your own power, strength inside, and then take the initiative, the volunteers come out. So, dear friends, I saw one day when my schools opened after holidays, my best friend was not there. And that made me very, very sad. And I asked everyone, my teacher and headmaster, then I went to his home. I knew that he was very poor. He belongs to a very poor family. His landlady told me that he and his brother left this rented room because they could not pay the rent and they were very poor. And that was the reason he left school. So I kept crying. I went to a nearby temple and praying God that something should happen, some miracle should happen, but he didn't come back. So I kept on thinking that what is the solution? I could have given me my books. Though I was not belonging to a rich family, I come from a very modest background. My father was a police constable. He passed away at a very early age. I was 16, 17-year old. So my widow mother and my brothers had to take care of my study and higher study and engineering and so on. So I spoke to some of my friends and I made one friend agree, another friend, that let us do something. So two of us decided that on the day when the school results are announced and most of us will go to the next grade, let us do something. So my mother gave me some money to bring some prasad, some offering to the god. Instead of that, me and my friend um, hired a rickshaw. If not rickshaw, in fact, it was a four-wheel cart which is used by the vegetable vendors and others. So we decided, I was standing on that cart and my friend was pulling it. And we did turn by turn. So I was standing and chanting, sisters and brothers, Mataji, Pitaji, uncle, auntie, grandparents, dadi, listen to us. So they came out and it was like a theater for them. So I said, congratulations to you because your children or grandchildren, your sisters, brother have passed in their grade and they have gone to the next grade. So they were all clapping and smiling. And then I proposed that, look, think of many children who could not continue their studies because they didn't have books. Syllabus books were very costly then, and the fees was another problem. And then we requested that please give your used books and put it on my card. And some of them liked that idea, and books came pouring in my cart. And I tell you, dear friends, and I have to take two turns because we were able to collect almost 3,000 books of different grades and so on. And each time when somebody put a book on the cart, a new Kailash Satyarthi was born. A new self confidence was born. A new power of volunteerism was born. I have never heard something like volunteerism or Swayam Seva or Samaj Seva and things like that at the age of 11. But I could recall, I could still feel that energy, that how much power it had when you go to the people with a noble cause, with a good heart, to give to the society with a big dream and big mission. So, as a child, that was my first experience. And many people came to know about this effort. And then we approached, two of us, my friend and me, approached our headmaster, and my headmaster called other teachers and a few more headmasters in primary and middle school. And we have brought an idea that let us establish a book bank so that the needy children can borrow books for the whole year, and it is the responsibility of the headmaster that these children return the book at the end of the session. So within 2, 3, 4 weeks, let me tell you, dear friends, that more than 10, 11,000 books were collected and a book bank was created. And I recall after my Nobel Prize, when I was visiting my hometown for the first time, because we live in Delhi for last more than 40 years, almost 45 years. So suddenly I saw that two people, elderly than me, were crying, weeping in fact, and saying, Kailash, book bank wala, come, Kailash, did you recognize me? One of them said. I did not recognize them, but I came down from my open jeep, and thousands, almost 70, 80,000 people were poured in my hometown. There's no place even to come to get down. But I somehow went close to these two people and I hugged them and they hugged me. And one of them told that, Kailash, I am just retired as the headmaster, and I have decided that no child should be left out. No child, no student is forced to leave schooling because of books or because of fees. I have been doing all my life because I studied out of those books which you have collected and established the book bank. And I started crying. And I tell you that this was so emotional for me, that those moments were so moving for me. I started crying also in tears because it was a great reward. It was even bigger than my Nobel Prize. When I was standing on the dais of Nobel Prize, I was not so emotional as I was with these two people. So it has huge power. And my dear children, I am going to share with you a simple formula, what I call 3D formula. I'm not talking about 3D cinema or 3D photos. This is the common thing. But my 3D are different. This is based on my experience, my own life. So the first D is dream. All of us have conscience and consciousness. All of us have minds. All of us have imagination. I'm not talking about those dreams which pull you in the night from your bed and take away somewhere. I'm talking about those dreams which you hold during the day and then try to realize them. So, if you are allowed to dream, then dream big. If I ask you what you want to become, and some child says that I wanted to become uh, a a teacher. I said, why don't you want to become the headmaster or even the principal, even the vice chancellor, or even the education minister or education secretary? Somebody says, I wanted to join the politics and wanted to become the MLA. Then I say them, why don't you dream? If you're allowed to dream, dream to become the prime minister of the country or president of the country. So if we are allowed, dream big, dream biggest. And those who dream for themselves only, they are not going to bring about positive change, constructive change, and they are not going to create a history for the betterment of society and planet. So better to dream for others as well as dream big and dream for betterment of others. And my second D is discover. All of us have tremendous power, tremendous power. We are never alone. I always say that if you feel alone, if you feel sometimes guilty, if you feel sometimes hopeless, frustrated, then find your friend, best friend. And your best friend is inside you, and that is your self confidence. Your self confidence is your best friend. So discover that all the time and keep it alive and discover the opportunities outside you. That is my second day. And my young friends, if you are able to dream, if you are able to discover your power and outside opportunities, whom are you waiting for? Somebody is not going to come from the heaven and then realize your dream. My third D is therefore do, act, act now, small or big, no matter, succeed or fail, no matter, but do your bit. So dream, discover, and do. Today, as we know, and many of you know, that when I started, child labor, child slavery, child labor, child trafficking were non issues. There were serious problems, though, but there was no discussion. They were never discussed in the parliament. In most countries, there were no laws. But the inspiration, the first spark I got from that cobbler boy at the age of 5, I carried it always with big dreams and my inner power and my relentless work. There was no international law in the world against child slavery, child trafficking. And when I came to know about it, I thought that why can't we think of fighting for an international law? So we organized a long march across 103 countries. Everybody laughed at me that what are you talking about? That is not possible. But we said that okay, let us do. So we marched 80,000 kilometers and demanded an international law. And this march ended up in Geneva in the General Assembly of International Labour Organization, what they call the convention. And a new international law against child slavery, trafficking, bonded labor, prostitution has been unanimously adopted, and that has become the only UN law which has been ratified universally by every single country in the world. So it is possible. Today, a lot of children from Balashram are sitting here. But I will also end uh, with the how this Balashram began and the inception of Balashram. This is a great story again of a child who had the power of volunteerism. Her name is Asmita. By the way, Asmita is my daughter. When she was born and grew up, she grew up with those children whom we used to, my wife and I and my colleagues, have to rescue from slavery. And then we set up a small place for their rehabilitation in Delhi, Mukti Ashram. And she used to go. When she learned alphabet, she started giving back to the society right from her childhood at the age of 4 or 5, and started teaching them some basic mathematics or alphabet, those children. And she grew like that. And one day she was invited to address the big General Assembly of Automobile Workers of Canada in Toronto. 20,000 workers were listening to her because she was the youngest activist or youngest volunteer for the cause of child rights, because she had an opportunity to address a special meeting of United States of America's Congress. She was the youngest to address the United States Congress at the age of 9 or 10. So when she was invited in Canada, everybody was so happy, clapping, standing ovation. And then they have offered her scholarship and stay and every possible facility to stay in Canada and complete her study. She said, no, I will go back and stay in my country. Then she has been offered some $10,000 as a gift. And she, they asked her, what are you going to do with this gift? She said that I'm going to set up an ashram. And they were all shocked. She said that I have a small place in Delhi. My parents are struggling for a bigger place, so I can set up with this. But that 10-year-old did not know that $10,000 are not enough for setting up the ashram. They were so moved, I tell you, that all of them were in tears, and they said that we will take care of setting up the full-fledged ashram, construction, land, and the running cost for at least 3 years. That continued for 5 years. That was the beginning of a gesture, the compassion, true compassion of a young child. And now she is the executive director of Global Sustainability Network, that is a civil society ally to fulfill the sustainable development goals, particularly the goal 8. So this story is the story of child. There's so many other stories I can share with you, but my time is over. Dear friends, I can sum up with a funny situation. When I was delivering my Nobel acceptance speech on the dais in Oslo, I lost my papers, and everybody was nervous, of course, king, queen, princess, prime minister, and so on. And then suddenly I remembered a story which I read in my childhood. There was a heavy fire broken out in jungle. All animals and birds were rushing for a safer place, including King Lion. And Lion noticed that a tiny hummingbird was flying towards the flames. And he shouted, "What are you doing?" She replied, "Sir, I am going to extinguish this fire because I was born and grew up there." More shockingly, said, "No, not possible. You are committing suicide." Then she said, "Sir, look at my beak. I am carrying a drop of water. I am doing my bit," she said. "I am doing my bit," she said. Rest is the history. Dear friends in Adobe and all those who are listening to me, you are born on this beautiful planet Earth. You are a member of 7.5 billion human beings. They are your family. You are not your richness, your wealth, your education. Your position, whatever you have gained in your life, is not just because of you. There are so many known and unknown people are responsible for that, and we have to be grateful to them. But millions and millions of the young people in the world who are not going to come and ask you, but it is your responsibility, it's our collective moral responsibility to make sure that they all smile as you and I are smiling today.